The truth did not surface gently. It detonated. What was once whispered suspicion has now erupted into a scandal that shatters every illusion of safety, loyalty, and redemption surrounding Izaiah and Eva. A man believed to have escaped his past is suddenly dragged back into it in the most brutal way imaginable, while the woman who stood closest to him is revealed as the one who pulled the trigger on his downfall. This is not merely the story of an arrest, but of a hidden crime clawing its way back to the present, of love curdling into betrayal, and of a single decision that turns two lives into a battlefield with no exit and no innocence left to claim. The night Izaiah was taken did not arrive with sirens first, but with a suffocating stillness that pressed down on him long before the police ever crossed the threshold of his life. It began as an unease he could not name, a tightening in his chest that had nothing to do with fear of arrest and everything to do with betrayal sensed but not yet proven. For 2 years, Las Vegas had existed in his mind like a sealed room, a place he never entered aloud but revisited relentlessly in private, replaying the same images until they blurred into something almost abstract. He had built his life in Fairmont Crest on the idea that the past, if starved of attention, would eventually die. He believed discipline could outrun memory, that love could overwrite guilt, that becoming someone else could nullify what he once was. Every calculated step he took forward was also a step away from that night, from the blood he told himself was not his fault, from the moment where panic had overtaken reason and choices had been made too fast to undo. What he never accounted for was the simple truth that the past does not need him to remember it in order to survive. It only needs someone else to uncover it. Eva had always been observant, though she masked it beneath warmth and patience. Her loyalty was never blind. It was conditional, rooted in the belief that truth, once known, must be confronted. When she first noticed the cracks in Izaiah's stories, she tried to ignore them. Minor inconsistencies at first, timelines that didn't align, names that were avoided rather than forgotten. She told herself that everyone carried scars they didn't wish to explain, that love meant allowing someone the dignity of silence. But silence has a way of becoming loud when fed by suspicion. What began as curiosity evolved into obsession, not because she wanted to destroy him, but because she needed to understand who she was tethered to. The deeper she looked, the more impossible it became to stop. Records surfaced that should not have existed, a name matching his that had been buried under procedural delays, a case that had gone cold not because it was solved, but because it was abandoned. Las Vegas was no longer a ghost city in his nightmares. It was now a tangible place with dates, reports, and a body that had never received justice. Eva's internal conflict did not come from doubt about what she had found, but from what it meant for her identity. She had built her sense of moral clarity on the idea that she stood on the right side of things, that she was not someone who enabled harm through love. Yet every piece of evidence forced her to reckon with the possibility that by staying silent, she would become complicit. Anger burned beneath her fear, not only at Izaiah for lying, but at herself for nearly accepting a half-truth because it was convenient. She oscillated between rage and grief, between wanting to confront him and wanting to erase the knowledge entirely. In the end, what pushed her toward the police was not revenge, nor a sudden allegiance to law and order, but a crushing realization that if she did nothing, she would spend the rest of her life negotiating with her own conscience. Turning him in was not an act of cruelty in her mind. It was a desperate attempt to reclaim control over a situation that had begun to rot her from the inside. For Izaiah, the arrest was not shocking in its occurrence, but devastating in its origin. The cold steel of handcuffs was familiar enough from memories he had convinced himself were dreams, but the knowledge that Eva had been the one to initiate the collapse of his carefully constructed reality detonated something far more volatile than fear. It was fury stripped of direction, a rage that fed on humiliation and heartbreak in equal measure. He had prepared himself for the law to catch up one day, had even imagined it as a kind of twisted absolution, but he had never imagined being delivered to it by the person he trusted most. In that moment, every act of kindness she had shown him reassembled itself in his mind as strategy, every concerned look transformed into suspicion. His anger was not clean or righteous. It was chaotic, laced with the desperate need to rewrite the narrative in which he was no longer the architect of his own downfall. As he was transported away, the weight of 2 years crashed down on him all at once. The choices he had made in Las Vegas replayed with renewed clarity, stripped of the justifications he had rehearsed. He remembered the fear, the violence he swore he never intended, the split second where self-preservation eclipsed morality. He also remembered the decision to run, to disappear into a new version of himself rather than face the consequences. That choice, more than the act itself, now felt like the true crime. Anger surged again, this time turned inward, because some part of him knew that Eva had only accelerated an ending he had postponed out of cowardice. Yet accepting that truth would require dismantling the victimhood he clung to, and that was a step he was not yet ready to take. Eva, left behind in the aftermath, did not feel victorious. The absence he left was loud, echoing through every space they had shared. Her anger did not evaporate with his arrest. It mutated, turning into self-reproach and a gnawing sense of isolation. She questioned whether she had acted too soon, whether confronting him privately might have yielded a different outcome, whether love could have salvaged something before the law intervened. At the same time, she was repulsed by the thought of what silence would have cost her. She imagined the victim in Las Vegas, a life reduced to a file number, and wondered how many nights she would have spent justifying her inaction had she chosen differently. The decision she made had closed one door irrevocably, but it had also opened a wound that refused to heal. The community around them reacted not with empathy, but with suspicion, as scandals tend to breed more questions than answers. Rumors spread quickly, reshaping Izaiah into a monster or a misunderstood casualty, depending on who was telling the story. Eva found herself scrutinized with equal intensity, labeled a traitor by some and a hero by others. Neither title fit. She was trapped in the uncomfortable space between moral obligation and emotional devastation, forced to absorb the fallout of a decision that had no clean resolution. Every glance reminded her that doing the right thing does not guarantee peace, and that justice often demands a personal sacrifice far greater than anticipated. Izaiah's anger hardened as the reality of his situation set in. Cut off from the world he had built, he began to reinterpret his entire relationship with Eva through the lens of survival. In his mind, her actions became an unforgivable betrayal, a calculated destruction of his chance at redemption. This narrative allowed him to avoid confronting the deeper truth that his life had been balanced on a lie from the start. Hatred became a shield against accountability, a way to preserve some fragment of control in a process designed to strip it away. Yet beneath that anger lingered fear, not only of conviction, but of being seen clearly, of having the version of himself he despised most laid bare for strangers to dissect. What binds them now is not love or trust, but the irreversible consequence of their choices. Eva chose to act, knowing it would fracture everything she had built with Izaiah. Izaiah chose to run from his past, believing he could outrun justice if he reshaped himself convincingly enough. Both decisions were made in moments of desperation, guided by fear and self-preservation rather than foresight. The collision of those choices has left them both cornered, forced to confront the parts of themselves they would rather deny. In this unraveling, there are no heroes and no clear villains, only two people grappling with the cost of truth and the destructive power of secrets finally dragged into the light. What remains after the arrest is not resolution, but a lingering sense of damage that cannot be undone. The truth has been exposed, yet it offers no relief, only a hollow silence filled with consequences still unfolding. Izaiah is left to face a past he tried to erase, stripped of the future he believed he had earned, forced to confront the reality that survival without accountability was never redemption. Eva, meanwhile, must live with the weight of her choice, knowing that doing what she believed was right has cost her love, safety, and the certainty of who she thought she was. There is no comfort in justice when it arrives this late, no triumph in being proven correct, only the slow realization that some decisions permanently fracture the people who make them. As the echoes of Las Vegas finally reach Fairmont Crest, They do not bring closure, but a reckoning that continues to poison every step forward.
The past has reclaimed its voice, and neither Izaiah nor Eva can escape the truth that their lives are now defined not by who they hoped to become, but by the moment everything collapsed, leaving them trapped in the aftermath of a choice that will follow them long after the verdict is delivered.